This week on Industry Relations, we suspend disbelief, and Rob and I pretend that we're in a buyer's market. Let's go. This is Industry Relations, a podcast at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Cotality. CoreLogic is now Cotality. Same trusted technology and data, just with a new name that reflects their mission to unify property professionals, strengthen industry relationships, and drive innovation globally. Cotality powers tools you already know and love, like Matrix, the gold standard for MLS systems. There's One Home for agents who want to give their clients a more personalized collaboration experience. MLS Touch keeps you connected to the MLS no matter where you are. Realist gives you the insights to stand out as the local expert and tools to fill your funnel with high-value leads. The new One Homeowner platform keeps you top of mind and delivers value long after the deal is done. The new One Homeowner platform keeps you top of mind and delivers value long after the deal is done. Learn more at Cotality.com. And if your MLS is powered by Cotality, don't miss Camp Cotality for MLS staff and leadership this June. It's the perfect place to connect, learn, and see what's next. Our thanks to Cotality for sponsoring Industry Relations.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. This is your host, the notorious ROB. And as always, my co-host, the fabulous Greg Robertson. We're so stupid. We're so silly.
I don't even know what I'm doing.
I know. We are so dumb.
I don't even know what I'm doing there.
We're so dumb. We should probably stop. Hey, would you like us to stop and do like a more professional intro instead of our ridiculousness? Please let us know in the comments.
I don't know. I listened to some other ones. It's not like everybody else is throwing in the everybody else is, Walter Cronkite or something. So
I mean, I don't know. Like, you think about like Dwiggins and and Keith's podcast. They're not stupid like we are.
No. Well, maybe that's their, viva la différence, right?
They're much more grown up, which is just bizarre.
Yeah, well, that's not an easy part. That's a very easy bar to play.
But I'm just saying, like, their audience is agents, our audience is like, industry leaders and fucking investment bankers, but we act like morons and they act like,
I don't know, man. I mean,
statesmen.
They got a good thing going. I'm one thing I'm excited about is CRMLS is having their Thrive broker conference here in Huntington Beach next weekend. So, and that would be, as far as we're recording on the 30th. Yeah. The Thrive conference is on, I think it's Sunday, June 8th is when it starts. And I'll be on stage with Keith Robinson at that thing. So we're kind of promoting it as we're breaking the chains. I don't have to worry about Rob. He doesn't have to worry about James. And, we're going to talk about the top three big questions in real estate.
Oh, so, right on.
I'm kind of like the sidekicks are going to have their own show here. It's going to be
sidekick my ass. That'd be awesome. It's gonna be recorded because obviously I won't be attending. I'd love to see it.
I don't think so. I'll have to ask Sarah about that. But CRMLS Thrive Broker Thrive, check it out online if it is. But I'm super
It occurs to me
about
that
it.
you have a son who is a film major and likely has a camera that could capture this footage.
He might go up there, Facebook Live type of thing. Well, I'll have to check to see what's happening there.
And if he doesn't have, like one of those Nikon or like one of the like real cameras, not some cell phone thing.
No, he's got a Sony. I mean,
it feels like this is the perfect time to leverage that.
Yeah, he keeps hinting at there's always a new camera, right?
Clearly, have to, But in any event, all right. So I think by the time this episode airs, people will be like flying back from mid-year.
Yeah, right. So this is we'll drop this on Wednesday. Typically, all the vendors head back on Wednesday. Yep. And then everybody else, all the heavies stay for the big meeting on Thursday, right? So
All right. So, but still, I mean, I think we have an interesting topic.
Yeah. This won't be. I think we have our live broadcast on the 6th, right? That's right. So that's what I'll probably, and I'll keep this in mind as kind of a mid-year recap.
Well, the 6th will be the live mid-year recap.
And that'll be after mid-year, but this is being recorded before that. So,
All right. So I love the topic, so I'll just let you introduce it and we'll get into it, man.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's just as much as the planning session happens for industry relations,
Deep planning.
yeah, really deep and long planning. Our content calendar is booked out 7 months on previous. In fact, it was probably 7 minutes previous on this one. You just retweeted something from Residential Club, right?
Yes, this
And
one.
I thought this was fantastic. This is a thing we've been talking about that I've been hoping would happen or start to happen. And again, I don't think we're there yet,
Yep.
but why don't you describe what the graph is saying here?
Sure, and
Or the,
kudos to Residential Club, right?
Oh, I love those guys. I love
they're
it.
doing
Yeah.
some great work.
Yeah.
I should probably just go get a premier subscription there. But basically, they put out data. This is number of home buyers. This is from Redfin, right? Versus home sellers as of April 25th. And I mean, look at this, right? So the place where I've got this was from ATX RE podcast, so it's probably just Austin focused. So they're just looking at Austin, showing 17,386 home sellers versus 7,757, right? But nationally, you could see the trend kind of holds as well, right? I mean, I guess, Seattle, Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, what's Miami, the top one?
Look at Miami, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's 2
like,
to 1.
For our listeners, why don't you
Sure.
read that?
So Miami, Florida is showing 21,672 home sellers versus only 7,280 home buyers.
And they give a difference in a percentage-wise of
right,
what is
of
that?
198%.
Yeah, 198%.
Yeah. And if you are just audio listening, this would be a good reason for you to get on YouTube and come to our channel and like and subscribe and click the bell and
It's
all
funny.
that jazz.
I'm all about the audio version of industry relations. You're always pimping the
because I'm trying to get with the
I
the
have a
future.
lot of love for audio only people. So
I mean, why not just start going to pigeons and smoke signals? And if we're going to use old technology, we're going to go to the printed book version of the podcast going forward. But in any event, it's a fascinating set of data, and I think it really clearly shows that we are likely either in or
shifting.
entering into a buyer's market.
yeah, and that was the inspiration. So I saw that and I retweeted that, and I thought that's a perfect thing to start off with. Where
Yep.
I keep a rolling list of, like, to me, the top 10 industry kind of things we're dealing with right now, and I thought it'd be a good exercise, especially with you. Because I know you're going to have a way different opinion.
Why, especially with me? What?
Because you're always.
Are you saying I'm a contrarian, Greg? What are you trying to say here?
So I have a list of, like, I think of like 10 things.
All right.
And I'm like, let's suspend disbelief, right? And let's say, we think there's a shift. We've been hearing a lot of things. Some people could argue, what is a good market, right?
Right.
It depends on what side of the market you're on, or you're buying or selling side. But I've always said that there's a lot of things in the industry that would be solved by going and shifting to a buyer's market. All right.
Right.
So in this podcast for the next 40 minutes, I want to kind of go to you, and then we'll go back and forth. I'm going to list off the top 10 kind of industry things there, and let's put it under the lens of, okay, we woke up today and it's definitely 100% buyer's market, and it's going more towards a buyer's market, and how that affects these industry trends. All right. All right. So number one.
Hold on. Before you do.
Okay.
I do want to point out, because this part's important. The assumption is super important. Okay. Because the last time we had a crazy ass buyer's market like this was right after the bubble collapsed.
Well, that's not, the GFC is like an anomaly though, right?
No, what I mean is, like, before then, when's the last buyer's market you remember?
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
late 90s.
Was that a buyer's market? Late 90s?
Or was it beginning of the 90s? Yeah.
I mean, but that was like more of a balanced market is kind of what I'm saying, right? So the last time we saw a true strong buyer's market, I would argue, is right after the bubble collapsed, because we're in a great recession. So people didn't have any, like, people were laid off, right? And again, there were some excesses happening in the GFC. So people, the famous story, the stripper who bought like 27 houses and all that. So there were some truly desperate sellers,
one does, yeah.
right? This time around, I think it's important to at least understand, why are we in a buyer's market, right? We don't have a GFC,
Right.
right?
Well, hold on. I mean, again, we don't know if we're in a buyer's market.
Well, the data.
Well, it's shifting that way, but I'm just saying, let's just suspend disbelief and say we are. Okay?
But what I think it's important, at least for our analysis, to understand why are we in a buyer's market, right?
Right.
So the last time around, the reason why we were in a buyer's market was because people were laid off like crazy, and home sellers were just absolutely desperate, right? They had completely overextended. So that's why we were in a buyer's market back last time. This time around, we know that homeowners are not like dramatically overextended, right? So this to me is entirely a function of not enough people want to buy homes or can afford to buy homes.
It's affordability, I think.
It's affordability. Yeah. Okay, so just with that in context, all right, now.
Okay, all right. So obviously the industry has been boggled or, burdened with a lot of antitrust issues, right?
Yes.
And it's still ongoing. If I would recommend people go read in the analysis you did of is it Tanya?
Yeah,
right?
Tanya. Yeah,
Tanya's
SDA. Yeah.
Her kind of what is that called that she?
It's an appeal. She's appealed it. Yeah.
Appeal to the NAR settlement, right?
Yeah.
So that's ongoing, but okay. In that context of sellers suing. Right. In that context, now we're shifting to a buyer's market. I'm not saying we're saying here as an assumption we're in a buyer's market. Does that really change anything in regard to in regard to any of these anything maybe further coming antitrust wise or extension of? I mean, because there is still a buyer's lawsuit out there, isn't there?
There is, but it's been sort of like subsumed because of the seller's lawsuit. I don't really think so. I mean, so for right off the bat, all of the lawsuits that are going on, the appeal, none of that is affected by whether we're in a buyer's market, seller's market, right? So I suppose the only interesting aspect of it is going forward, we have entered a buyer's market. Let's assume for the time being that the Eighth Circuit does not completely wreck shop.
Right.
Because that was the whole premise of covering the Monestier appeal is if the Eighth Circuit reverses the settlement, we're back to square one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All the things we've been doing for the past year, right? The buyer agency agreement.
As a quick sidebar, have attorneys been paid already?
I don't know. I guess so, but there might have to be rescission, cough that money back up. I don't even know. I honestly don't even know how that all works.
Can you take back a private jet? What's the return policy on a private jet?
I mean, I don't even know. But let's just assume the Eighth Circuit doesn't do that, right? So that the rules that we have in place today continue, right? Is there some sort of an antitrust claim by buyers 5 years from now saying that we got ripped off because of some anti-competitive thing? I don't know, man. I don't really.
Okay, no, hey, that could be the answer, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think I agree with you there, right? I mean, those things are kind of already things that have been started. I don't think there's anything there. Okay, next thing, government regulations, right? So, so the thing, just to go back to your premise, is that I think, and I think you think, it's affordability, which is going to be the bigger thing. So obviously, if it's a buyer's market, we're thinking that prices has come down, but we all know that from 2000 pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, you're talking about average home price was almost doubled, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not quite, but almost doubled. So how much of that can be eroded back, even if you came back halfway? Right. It's still a lot of increase, right? I mean, I don't know how far we go back, but it will make things more affordable for people, right? So do we think that would impact any sort of things that the government, I don't think the government's doing anything there, but any government regulations or maybe put a pause to government regulations? Hey, looks like the market's correcting itself and let's be out of this, or what?
When it comes to government and politics, I feel like I'm more often wrong than not. I mean, what do you think? Let's flip that around. You're a much more pro-government guy. Do you see anything happening?
No. I mean, it's like, remember Doge?
Yeah.
Good times.
Right. That's kind of how I feel.
It's like nothing ever gets done.
So the way I'd like to look at sort of potential regulations or legislation or what have you is what's in it for the politicians, right? The only one I could maybe kind of see is, and this we know is already kind of happening, the whole ban on corporate landlord thing.
Yeah.
trying to blame.
That's such a meager part
Correct.
of the market. Yeah.
Correct. So, but that's easy to do because it affects so few people, right?
Yeah.
And those guys are super rich anyways. They don't need to make money this way, right? That feels like an easy like political win, right? If I'm a Congress critter or senator, it's like, hey, look, I'm standing up for you working Americans thing, The only other one that I could even conceivably think about is some sort of action on like, on realtor commissions, right? Because again, I think it would be an easy political win for some Congress critter somewhere to be like, look, at a time when it's so hard for you to buy a house, your agent is taking home $30,000. Like, that's not fair. I'm going to do something about it. Bullshit. Like,
yeah, I think that would be harder also.
Right, you know what I mean? Like, exactly. And then I think about the power of NAR and like,
I mean, it's just about, to me, it's regulations, is reducing regulations. But the problem we have there is that's all local. It's not something you can go on a national thing or everything. And local politics is, ugh.
Exactly.
Right.
So
okay.
I don't really see that. The only thing, I suppose the only thing that I do think might be possible is, okay, we're in a buyer's market. Sellers getting hammered. They're gonna have to lower prices, right? I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. Maybe that creates a slightly better political environment for like the local or state governments to start making it easier to build houses.
Yeah.
Maybe
you're starting to see little green shoots in here.
Correct.
Like, in Orange County, where it's been typical,
Correct.
hard to. Man, they're just Irvine Company is announcing they're shutting down Oak Creek Golf Course and want to put houses there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're starting to see like, again, this goes to the narrative, right? I mean, we're going to see more of this newer stuff, and that inventory gets on the market, and then it's going to lower everything down here. So we have to, maybe next time we could have Kevin on again.
Sure.
And talk about the new home market again.
Sure.
But
The thing is, like, I think because of the industry we're in, we tend to think a little bit too much about buyers and sellers. If there is going to be regulation, this will have reverberating effect. I think it's far more likely to see rent control.
Okay, yeah, because that's where housing is, yeah.
Correct, because if you think about the vast majority of like working people or poorer people, they're not buying, they're renting. And I could see more of a push if things continue in this path towards, we just need to do rent control, right? And again, every economist that has ever lived will be like, rent control is the absolute fucking worst thing you could possibly do. But if you're a politician, you don't care about that. You care about getting votes.
Yeah.
So, that feels like more doable. And if that happens, then all of a sudden you have supply increase and, because investors will start dumping property, right?
Yeah.
And that'll have a price impact. So that's about the only thing I could possibly see.
Okay,
anyway,
that's
moving
good.
on. All right.
Okay, so that's number one. Number two, number three I have down here is tech-enabled brokerages, right?
Okay.
These brokerages with more tech-enabled stuff, right? So how do we think? Well, I guess you could say here
Redfin.
Okay. So this. Okay, let's put it in that
Compass,
count
Real.
Yeah. So if you. Okay, let's talk about well, I think we have portals later, so let's keep it this brokerage-wise, right? So tech-enabled brokerage was with their model of, like let's say an EXP, no offices, it's all online. Redfin again, all online, pretty much. How does this do tech-enabled brokerages, and that specific? I think we'll talk about like other facets of the brokerage later, but does that change anything here in regard to how they recruit, how they operate? I mean, it's now a buyer's market. Tech enabled. I think the tech is neutral.
Yeah,
they can point. It's like a rifle and whatever bullet you want to connect. It's just where you point that rifle, right?
Not only that, but at this point, the reason why I was so sort of struggling is like, what do we mean by tech-enabled brokerage? Because every brokerage I could think of right now is tech-enabled.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think like ERA or Century 21 or some of these things. Yeah, they have partnerships or whatever. But I mean. But like you said, the two examples you gave, or three examples, Real,
Compass,
Redfin, EXP. I think those
EXP
things
doesn't
are
have
like,
any tech.
what are you talking about? Those guys. I mean, they were all. I'm an avatar.
I know, but
I'm in
that's
the middle
irrelevant.
of whatever, right?
That's
Yeah.
fucking irrelevant to the real estate transaction, right? That just helps them cut office costs down.
Okay. Well, no.
Right.
I mean, again.
But that's what I mean. Like every brokerage is tech enabled at this point.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Like
All right.
Century 21. In other words, what would be interesting is there was a brokerage that launched. Here's a counter example. Could you imagine a brokerage that launched that says, we're not tech enabled?
Right.
We're old school craft brokerage. Everything done by hand. No DocuSign. We're
No
going to drive
DocuSign.
to your house and you're going to, like, I don't know. There might even be a space for something like that in some markets. I don't even know. But anyway,
Absolutely.
all right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
from that standpoint, I feel like there's zero impact. However, I will point this out because this is important. Okay, so we go to a buyer's market. I think this might be an area where we might see some brokerage somewhere, or maybe it's an agent team, really, really leverage AI.
Okay,
Right,
we're going to come in AI.
To do buyer services, but here's the important part: cheaper. Because every tech thing in real estate, it never leads to, therefore, you can provide your services for less. Like, just as a whole industry, we are completely, anathema, right? Like, we don't ever want to say, this will make your job more efficient, therefore you can offer it cheaper.
Right.
It's never that, right?
Yeah.
This will make it more efficient so you could do more deals at the same price. Somebody somewhere is going to figure out, you know what? I could now do stuff cheaper, right? And in a buyer's market, maybe that has some sort of advantage because you're able to go to buyers like, listen, I'll just charge you $2,000 because with my technology, I can do it way cheaper.
Right.
Something like that might be possible in a true buyer's market.
Yeah. Okay. What about iBuyers? That's number 4 on my list. It's how does I don't know if a buyer's market really helps these guys. Yeah.
I don't think so.
Man, talk about a swing and a miss. I really thought this would be.
Me too, man. I still have some open door stock.
I don't even want to tell you how much I paid for that shit. Yeah, it's still, it's going to be one of those things where, like, if I make some gains on something else, I'm going to sell that thing. I got a lot built in there for loss.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was easy. Okay, number 5, the dominance of listing portals, right? So, I mean, I think we have to separate these things out because on one level, if it becomes harder to sell homes, you might look at like a homes.com model where you can pay for these showcases, and Zillow has the same thing. Those types of products might do better because they can convince the brokerages and the agents, like, you need to make sure your listing stands out because it's a buyer's market now and we have to do things right. So,
okay.
And I guess Homes was the one that was going to kind of pioneer that, but really Zillow's taken a big lead on that because of their Showing Time Plus initiatives and a lot of things they're doing there. And then again, I would give it, if I'm just talking about, because there's really Homes.com and everybody else, Zillow and Realtor.com and Trulia and all that, they make money selling to buyer's agents, right? Or buyer leads, right?
Yep.
So, okay, well, maybe let me think back. Is that a good thing? If it's a buyer's market, are you making more money?
Those buyer leads are incredibly valuable at that point, right? Seller leads are worthless at that point.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So buyer's market, good news for Zillow? Yes or no?
It's such a good question, man. I think at the surface, I'm going to say yes, of course, because the buyer leads will become much more valuable.
Okay, buyer's leads good for Homes.com?
No, hold up. No, of course not, because Homes.com doesn't sell any. However, there's this weird thing I think that's happening that it might not play out the same way. So I'm going to take a contrarian view. Okay.
Shocking.
Maybe. No. Like I don't. This isn't necessarily even what I believe. I think it's an interesting conversation. So
devil's advocate.
I'll throw it out there just to see, like, does this make sense? And I think it goes something like this. Okay, the buyers who are in the market today are going to be wealthy people, right? Because the reason why we're in a buyer's market is because of affordability, right? You're not going to have a whole bunch of 29-year-old, first-time home buyers, right, who are really confused. A lot of it, and NAR stats back this up, like the average home buyer is now like 53. You know what I mean? Like,
right, yeah.
It's fucking insane. So we're talking about people who are not, not like what we think of when we, and this I think is important. When we
young
think buyer,
family or
yeah, exactly.
whatever.
When we think buyer in our heads, I think the picture we have is the 30-something young family with a baby who's like, okay, it's time to move out of the condo, or out of the apartment and get a house, right? I don't think those are the buyers today.
They aren't.
Right. I think the buyers are either going to be investors, right? They're going to be LLCs, corporations, right? Or they're going to be older people, right? Even if we're saying millennials, all right, so maybe now they're 35, 36, right?
Yeah, probably older than that, but yeah.
Probably older than that, but like 35, 36, they have a bunch of whatever money, they have investments, they're doing well in their jobs, and then they're like, okay, honey, it's now time to buy a house, right? And we've got 3 kids, whatever it is, right? It's like a different thing. I think there's a real possibility those people sort of revert to the old ways. Let me explain what I mean. I think for 20 years now or so, right, we went to self-service, right? People wanting to search themselves. And if you think about it, it's because before the internet came along, the only way you could like find out what homes were for sale was to go to a realtor.
Right.
Right? I mean, back in the MLS book days, you had to walk into a real estate office and the realtor had to flip open the book and show you what's for sale, right? There was no, because you could look at newspapers, right, and then circle them and whatever, but do you know what I mean? Realistically.
Yeah.
Internet comes along, all of a sudden for the first time, we now have the ability to just go search ourselves. And I think we went through like 20 years of that. And this is not just real estate. This is like everything, right? Like we talked about travel. There was a time you had to call a travel agent to book a flight. What I think is kind of interesting is in recent years, I'm starting to sense that more and more people, especially the wealthy, are going back to that. Like, I don't want to do this. I want somebody else to do it for me.
Yeah, I don't even think it's going back. I mean, the rise of people using real estate. I mean, there's been a uptick of people who actually use realtors, right? I mean, we saw that during the pandemic too, right? I mean, and you're right. I just checked it, but the average age of a home buyer now is 56 years old. That's just,
right.
Now that's not a first time home buyer, but home buyer.
Home buying, period. So the chart that we had up, it listed all home buyers. It wasn't first time home buyers, right?
Well, first time home buyers, according to the Google, is 38, right? Or 30, 38. So that's still, to me, kind of like
really old.
It's close to 40, right?
So
I mean,
I'm just
crazy.
saying. So when I think about the buyers now in this buyer's market, right? So okay, they're going to be wealthier, older, probably busy. I could see a lot of them in a weird way saying, you know what, I don't want to surf Zillow.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm hiring a realtor, if I'm hiring a buyer's agent, maybe now it's like, look, man, like, what are you going to do for me? Right. Because 5 years ago, I think it was like, what are you going to do for me? I'm going to show you the house. I'm going to I'm going to advise you this, that, and the other thing. But are you going to find a home for me? And I think the realtor, no, go use Zillow, go use Redfin, right? And then I'll show you the homes you want me to show you.
Yeah.
That might be changing.
Right. Because there'd be a lot of thing. It could be their cup runneth over. There's so many to look at, right? Because, and it's like, I've looked at these things, but I need some help because there's so many of these things, right? Again, we're a complete flip of the situation we're in now.
And we don't know the habits anymore. So, you brought this up that Zillow's become like a social phenomenon, right? Whereas SNL is going to
it's in our zeitgeist, right? I mean,
But none of the people on SNL were actually buyers. They're just like looking at homes and dreaming, like, ooh, right? Imagine this. Yeah. I think the actual buyers in the market, the ones that Resi Club, sort of pointed out, those feel a little bit more to me like, oh, we're serious and we want to buy something, which means we're wealthier, we're older, we're busier. So I could see them going, we're in a buyer's market, cool. Here's something that I'm going to predict now. I could see the rise of non-exclusive buyer agreements, right?
Right.
Be like, whoever brings me the house that I'm going to buy, I will pay you. But I'm not working only with you.
And again, I could take the counter to that. Listen, there's so much out there. I got to do a buyer's agent could show really even more so. There's a shit ton of work I have to do here. I'm going to need some commitment from you that if I'm going to go through and doing these things. I mean, so you could take both sides. Yeah.
Except that there are very few buyers and there are 1.5 million realtors. Right. Well, so if I'm that rich buyer and I'm qualified, whatever, I've got down payment in the bank, I could be like, nah, man, you don't want to work for me? That's fine. I'll go find somebody else who will work for me, right? And, maybe it's limited. Like, listen, the exclusivity is whatever house you show me, I'm going to buy through you, right? But I'm not going to sit around waiting for your schedule. I'm going to go work with whatever buyer agent I want, right? Yeah. You don't like it, then don't work with me. Because, again, buyer's market means the buyer now has a lot more leverage, a lot more power.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, okay. Well,
I could see
one of
that.
the reasons I want to talk about this is the dominance of listing portals here. Number 5 we're talking about is.
So this is, I'm going to bring that back to listing portals. What I mean is if that's the case, then I think all the listing portals lose, including Zillow.
Right. Because people are going direct to agents that they want to do that searching for them.
And I think I mentioned this before.
I think it's more supplemental. I think they might lean more towards the services of a realtor, but I don't ever think they're never going to go to those sites. I mean,
I don't think it's not a never. I don't want to put this like.
I mean, if affordability goes down, people that weren't looking before will start looking.
If affordability comes down, but then we're not in a buyer's market.
Well, no. Of course we are, right? Because more people can afford to buy the house.
No, buyer's market means there are more sellers than buyers.
Well,
if price comes down, the number of buyers come up, and now we're in a balanced market.
But now that they have to compete, they have to lower their price of their home.
Then we're not in a buyer's market.
Well, there's some balance there to do that, right?
Agreed, but we're talking specifically. You're in a buyer's market where sellers outnumber buyers 2 to 1 by 198%. Right. In that scenario, buyers absolutely in the driver's seat, right? I think they just go, hey, realtor, find me the house. I don't want to do the work. And for that matter, you're not the only realtor I'm talking to. I'm talking to 3 other realtors. Whoever finds me the house gets paid.
Okay.
You don't like it, don't work for me.
So in the context of listing portals and Compass being a portal, right?
Yeah.
Where does fucking exclusive listings fall into this?
I think exclusive listings is a big win.
In a buyer's market.
In a buyer's market.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Fucking.
I know that's completely contrary, right?
So I'm going to tell my seller, yeah, I know. Let's not put it out on the market because there's way too many homes on the market right now.
I think the way it's going to work is the buyer's going to want an advantage.
Well, they would have to switch the messaging of what their 3-pronged strategy is then, though, right?
I don't know, possibly. But here's what the reason why I mentioned this, I vaguely remember, like, right after the GFC, right? Buyers are, like, in charge, right? They're large and in charge. And a lot of agents would go to the buyers to just get the buyers to work with them, be like, hey, I have access to this other thing. Like, you want to work with me, right? Like, okay, so.
Those were typically, in those days, I remember those days very well. Yeah. It was agents were learning how to work with short sales, and I mean all the foreclosure. They were just expanding their tool set and their experience to be able to handle houses that were abandoned or had all these kind of hair on it. Right. That's what I remember them doing. It wasn't about. This would be a different situation, as you said in the beginning.
It is different, but I mean, it's even the short sales, blah blah blah. That was still on the listing side. I'm saying to convince a buyer to work with you instead of somebody else. A lot of agents had to try and come up with something. Do you know what I mean? And a really powerful something is I have access to exclusive inventory. To a buyer, right? Mm-hmm. So put yourself I'm the rich 56-year-old buyer. I want to buy a home, right? And I talk to an agent and they're like, oh, I will, whatever, be your best friend and I'm going to treat you like family. The whole spiel that we typically get. I'm a local expert, blah, blah, blah. I can help you. And I talk to the next guy, and the next guy is, I'm a local expert. I'm going to treat you like family, but I also have access to exclusive inventory. Which one am I going to use?
Yeah,
I'm going to use the second guy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Again, take housing out of it for a
challenge. I
second.
think the challenge would be convincing the seller. I mean, it's a challenge for them now, right?
Right, but
Is
I
really
know.
convincing the seller about that narrative,
I
right?
know, but hear me. So just take housing out of it for a second, right? Say you're dealing with artwork or antique Volkswagen vans, because that's an area that you know really well, right? Like if there was a guy who says, "Hey, man, I have access to all this private, like it's not even on the market, but I know the owner, right, of some whatever unique VW van. You work with me, I can get you into maybe buy that one before anybody else can, right?" You and I both know the buyers will naturally go, "I'm going to work with that guy."
Well, I mean, I've been in these situations, right?
Right.
And my first emotion is distrust. Yeah, okay, buddy. Yeah, everybody says that. You're trying. This is some sort of hook you're trying to get me in. I'm not going to surrender. I'm not going to sign anything because of that. So you're my exclusive agent. If you want to show me something that you think you have that's off the market, fine.
Sure.
But that's not going to make me only sign with you. So if
And that brings us back to the multiple buyer agency thing.
right. Well,
Which could happen.
It's a different
No,
narrative.
but it's the same.
Yeah.
Okay, you say you have exclusive. Cool, I will sign with you.
No, okay.
But it's not exclusive.
I feel you. I
right?
feel you. Yeah.
But if the buyers are wealthy, there are fewer of them, they're in this position, they're in the driver's seat, I actually see them flocking to the Compass of the world. And then the pitch to the seller now goes like this: "Hey, man, you ain't going to, like, this is a buyer's market, right? I've got a database of 50,000 high net worth buyers. EXP ain't got shit. You should list with me."
Yeah.
I actually think if we flip to a real strong buyer's market, it's counterintuitive. I totally get that it's counterintuitive.
I appreciate you do your jobs so professionally and so well, Rob.
Thank you. But I do think there's a chance that the exclusive guys are the big winners.
This is exactly the feedback we get. It's like, I can't anymore. I can't, because I can't tell whether this guy is just fucking with me or he's like completely serious. And I will tell all our listeners and viewers, it is both. Okay.
Yeah. No, and I'll tell all the listeners, listen, I'm not saying this is the right way. What I'm saying is that it could be.
Yeah.
And you know
sure.
what? I'm so happy to be wrong. I'm so happy to be wrong. Right.
Well, that's a good thing.
Right. But I think there's a blindness to just following like one conventional wisdom path as well.
Yeah, no, this is why people listen.
Correct.
So, okay. Moving on.
Next.
Number 6. God, this is going fast, bro. This is good for us. AI and automation is how does, and I think you've already mentioned it.
Yeah.
There are ways of that happening, right?
Yeah.
I was on another call the other day, or earlier today, I should say. There's a big opportunity on agent responsiveness. I mean, I've seen some of the tech on like video and voice. You can just make your own avatar to answer all these things that realtors aren't answering, right? So I think any AI and automation are going to be in any, whether it's a buyer or seller market, there's going to be ways of using that. So I think that's kind of easy.
Absolutely.
Let's go to number 7 though, erosion of trust.
Okay.
Right. So there is a notion out there you talked about in the beginning of like, in the context of like, hey, it's going to lower the commissions. These guys are ripping you off or whatever. But by the switching to a buyer's market, will this help heal or make better? I don't know, because I think this is always a thing, but will it going to a buyer's market help heal the erosion of trust that maybe consumers have with the industry? I'll take one point and then you can go counter, right? So I would say yes.
I may not go counter, but okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me why.
I would say yes, because now it's like with this kind of, I'm trying to think of the phrase, this, again, the cup runneth over, right? This, you have a lot, right, to choose from, that I think the agent's going to be able to get better deals than they would in the past because of this competition that's out there. That maybe they're going to feel like their agent did a good job at getting them better deals. Because right now, I mean, they're having to pay over the price, right? Maybe there's going to be some deals now that can be done because there's going to be a lot more to choose from that they can get some deals going, right? So I'll
Why-
just
why
throw
would
that out
that-
there.
why
Well,
would
okay,
that-
no, that's what I'm saying now. Let me hear the counter.
No, it's not even a counter. It's a question. Why would that lead to trust?
Well, I think you would be more likely to say, "Oh, okay, man, they got me a good deal. I'm paying paying $15,000 more. I'm so glad that I hired this person to help me do this process, and that is going to help me. That would add to my feeling of that I got what I paid for. There's a value in what I paid for, and those kind of sentiments lead to better trust."
Possibly. Okay. I'm going to agree, but for a different reason.
Okay.
I think, if we go into a true buyer's market in the current environment, I think it will lead to an increase in trust. But not for the reason you think. I think it will lead to an increase in trust because a lot of agents will be driven out of the industry.
By it being a buyer's market. Okay.
Right. Because, so again, let's think about this.
Well, we're going to talk about that. That's a 10 thing as far as the.
Okay, so it's all connected.
Yeah.
But the way we've always talked about it is, look, the top agents all list.
Yeah.
Right. So it's that middle and bottom agents. They're the ones who really survive on representing buyers. Because, as you and I both know, representing buyers is a lot more work.
Yeah. How about it?
It just is. You got to drive them around.
Physically, yeah.
Right? It's a lot harder. Whereas representing a seller, you do your marketing and you wait for the offers to come in. Right?
Not to say that the marketing's not a lot of work too, but yeah.
Of course, but it doesn't compare to driving somebody around for 6 weekends. It just doesn't, right? Which is why the buyer's market has always been dominated by like newer agents, younger agents, less productive, blah 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 blah. Okay, if we go to a buyer's market, those top agents will absolutely dip into the buyer, right? And especially the best buyers. I think we could see, I don't know, some percent, 30% of the agent population just straight up like leave the industry because they can't make any money.
I'm stopping making any predictions on
I
agents fucking
know.
leaving. Right?
I know. But you know what I mean? Like if we're in a true buyer's market, right? Because that's kind of what we saw right after collapse.
Yeah, but it dipped and then it went way back.
It went back up after 2011 when the market recovered, right? But for now, what I'm saying is like, so the trust factor could go up simply because we'll have better agents who are more trustworthy doing more business with buyers that they're not doing today.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I could see that being a factor. But who the hell knows?
Yeah. Okay. Number 8,
right.
DIY. This goes back to a little bit of like, you could see the buyer representation agreements being thrown out, but more people just wanting to do the whole process themselves. Does a buyer market make that? No, you say.
I mean, you agree with the answer, right?
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to do anything. Like I said, I mean, I don't want to search Zillow.
Yeah. There's well, I think it's more than that, but yeah, I mean, there's everything that has to happen after that. I mean, just that stack of fucking forms you have to sign, right? I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's easy. Okay. Number 9, industry consolidation.
Okay.
Does a buyer's market force industry consolidation to increase, decrease? What do you think?
I mean, based on my counterfactual, I'm going to say it increases, right? Because if the biggest hook to getting a buyer is exclusive inventory, then it provides such a massive incentive for brokers to go and do consolidation.
Okay, so it increases. Okay, so let me think about this from a vendor standpoint, right? So in a buyer's market, do transactions increase or decrease? What do you think?
Decrease.
Decrease. Okay, so there are a lot of models out there that are transaction based, forms, things like that, right? And then you're also saying that you could, again, agent count is always a fucking thing, but
I know.
You're thinking in buyer's market that the agents count decreases. There's a lot of models out there that have to do butts and seats.
Yep.
So that would also cause revenues to go down with some vendors.
Yep.
And then because of that, you would see, I think, businesses not being able to like support themselves on their own, and then consolidation would happen, right? Okay. All right. I think I agree with you there. I think there's some things there that are. I'm not, again, the agent count stuff is, I mean, again, it's so easy to keep your license and your, and access to MLS. Why not?
Sure.
All right, number 10, our last one here, MLS and association relevance. Right? Does a buyer's market help where we're at now? The challenges that associations have with relevance and the MLS community as a whole.
Well, first, you got to separate them. Association relevance has nothing to do with the buyer or seller market.
Okay.
Right. Association relevance has to do with the fact that they don't have any value other than the
well,
MLS
if you tie that back to agent count, as you said, I mean,
Right.
that does have relevance because they're not going to have as many agents there, not as much of revenue, right?
But even the agents that I have today, they only have it because of the MLS.
In your
So
opinion.
association relevance is separate. Association
Okay.
relevance has to be reinvented based on like lobbying or something, right? Public service, something, right? That's a whole separate discussion.
Okay.
MLS relevance is slightly different.
Okay,
right?
let's talk about MLS relevance.
MLS relevance in a true buyer's market. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think just there's been so many issues that having to do with this incredible uptick of the seller's market, this 10-year
Right.
plus
Right.
thing. To reverse that and have things, because remember what is going to happen is, and we're saying this is now, right? But what's going to happen is that's going to happen over time, and we're going to get to more of a equilibrium or an equal
Sure.
market,
Sure.
a balanced market, as they say, and then dip down into the buyer's thing. And I think going for the industry to get off this fucking top of the fucking roller coaster is, as long as that slope coming down isn't too bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is I think a good thing for the industry as a whole. I think it just has going back to more of a balance than just this straight up rocket ship ride that we've been on. So overall, I think it would be a good thing for the industry and the MLS
So you think
industry.
the MLS relevance increases in a buyer's market? And if so, and I'm not saying
I
you're
think
wrong. Give me the mechanism for how that happens.
I think that the challenges the MLS industry has had on pocket listing, and I know you're making a counter to that, but to me, I think this would get rid of a lot of the pocket listing kind of thing. It has in the past, and I think this would be the same case here. A lot of the challenges that the MLS industry had are having to do with this prolonged seller's market, right? And I think that the decrease of that into more of a balanced market, into a buyer's market, would lessen the challenges that the MLS industry has had in the past 10 to 15 years. My opinion.
Okay. I'm trying to think, okay, we're in a buyer's market. I'm a rich 56-year-old buyer. I go hire my realtor and say, hey, just find it for me. Realtor goes into the MLS, does a search there, as opposed to going to Zillow and Redfin. From that standpoint, the MLS could become more relevant,
Right.
right?
Yeah, you could look at it that way.
I could look at it that way. Conversely, if a buyer's market actually drives exclusives forward because it's the best hook to get a buyer, then the MLS relevance goes down.
Yeah, it does go back to what you think, how this is played and what consumers will accept, right? So, yeah.
And then you got to, like, the flip side, of course, is, okay, I'm the seller, right? Like, okay, I know I'm in a buyer's market. All right, now what, right? I go to my agent, I put in the MLS, I put it on Zillow, I put it everywhere, right? We gotta get in front of as many buyers as possible.
Right.
Versus some Compass agent comes to me and says, hey, we're going to do this 3-part, whatever, exclusives, and then this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, you're crazy because, there's 18,000 of me and only 6,400 buyers. You're telling me I'm going to decrease, right? That's, yeah.
It's an interesting exercise for sure. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to that kind of, be careful what you wish for. I mean, I from my own standpoint, it's like, I'm just like, give me some change here, baby. Right? Let's do something.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Let me ask you a question because I've been wondering about this. So this isn't necessarily related to the buyer's market thing, right? But maybe it is. So I see the stat about buyer's market, whatever, right? And it's because of affordability, right? And I saw a tweet immediately after of some guy asking, like saying that he knows of a family, in Dallas, where they have this big, beautiful house. And I guess because they bought in like 21, 22, or maybe like 22, 20, after the rates started going up,
Yeah.
their mortgage payment is just fucking insane. And they're trapped, right?
Okay.
And that's a buyer's market. They would love to get out from under this mortgage. So they would looking to sell. Not enough buyers. No one can afford it.
That would be
right?
a
Blah, blah,
reason,
blah.
a reason
Right.
for that.
But
sure.
they can't afford to sell because, short sell, right? They can't afford to come down in price. They would lose so much equity, right? Like they would actually have to bring a check to the closing. Like they're not doing that.
Right,
Okay.
but what they would have to do is make that mental calculation. Okay, I'm going to write a $10,000 check, but over the next
Oh,
5 years,
there's another path. This is the
Okay.
question. All right. What happens if homeowners in next year, later this year, just say, you know what, I'm just going to stop paying the mortgage?
well, so this is a GFC kind of
Correct.
situation. Yeah.
Correct. The first time this happened, I remember writing an article. I remember even maybe having a conversation, obviously before podcasts or any of that. I was like, the government bailed out the banks.
Yeah.
And they did a whole lot of programs to bail out homeowners, if you remember. Right?
Yeah, well, forgiveness and forbearance.
all these things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That made a lot of people go, why the fuck am I the sucker? Why am I keep paying this damn mortgage? Right? And I remember that, and the millennials are young when that happened. And I think a lot of them still have this memory of like, my mom and dad lost their house. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Meanwhile, the banks got bailed out, and all these other people who were really just profligate, they just got to stay in their house for 2 years. And the bank redid the whatever loan and all this shit. Does that come back in the next, quote, buyer's market, where the sellers just go, I'm just not going to pay the mortgage. And, I'm not leaving. Evict me. Right? Or
Well, I again, it would depend on government involvement because in that
Right.
case, back in the day, the government they had almost the government as a behind them on it.
right.
So they would have to see here whether because the government is not behind it. Well, I'm getting the sheriff over there and kicking your ass out, right? I mean,
Maybe, but guess what? There's like 7,000 eviction cases pending at the court.
yeah, sure.
Right. So two questions.
But again, I think the government being behind it would rise that to 7,000. If a person's going to make that decision and know, I'm not going to be able to have the government on my back, or who's going to have my back on this, it might lessen that number.
So two questions, right?
Okay.
One is there still any moral sanction? Because back when it happened the first time, right? The whole thing that I thought was really under attack was the idea of, hey man, you borrowed this money, right? Like you're a bad person if you don't pay it back. Like there was a moral thing going on, right? A lot of the middle class, solid Americans were like, but I owe this money, right? There's like a moral component to I should pay back what I borrowed, right? I feel like that all died during GFC. So
Yeah.
agree or disagree?
I don't think it all died.
You think it still remains?
I think there's people that still believe that. Yeah, that I made a commitment. I'm going to honor that commitment.
You do?
Yeah.
Do you think it's the majority?
I would hope so, Rob. I really would.
I don't know.
I just think that there's maybe some people that were on the line of like, that's how they grew up. That's what they were told to do the right thing and everything else. But when the government says in, hey, we understand that some people are having whatever, we're going to do this forbearance thing, or if, they're not going to be able to, if they have that, that's going to get them off the fucking line and say, well, shit.
Right.
I mean, if they're going to say this, it's almost like the PPP loans, right? I
But
mean,
that's
like,
what happened.
but not everybody. You're saying
Not
all.
it, but there's enough of them. Like I said,
Well,
this is the thing.
right.
The millennials who are 40 today remember their parents going through this back in '08, right? And they're like, my parents did the right thing. They paid whatever, this, all this shit. And ultimately, they lost their house because they got laid off, and they did the right thing and just moved out. Meanwhile, holy shit, these however many millions people didn't do the right thing, and the bank just restructured the loan and the government came in and helped them out.
Yeah.
Like, why would I be the moron to keep paying?
Right. I mean, but when you say morality, right? Because I'm sure, and everybody can, rationalization is something and everything, right?
Of course.
It can talk about your loan, or like, I really shouldn't have this cheeseburger, but I deserve it, right? And just to get a little personal there.
Yeah.
But when the government, when what you see is that the system was just rigged against you.
Right.
When you did these ninja loans and everything else, and it's like, well, motherfucker, if the government is allowing all that shit to happen, and because they allow that to happen, this fucks me.
Right.
There's no, a lot of people probably made, it wasn't a moral argument. It was like, fuck you. I'm not paying.
Right.
Right. And this is a system design.
That's right.
You did this to me. So
That's
I don't,
right.
Again, there's some rationalization that
Well,
maybe have been spot on, right?
I don't want to be this. Oh, so that's question one.
I don't know if it's a moral, morality.
Okay, question two.
Yeah.
If that happens, does the government not step in to bail out homeowners this time around?
Yeah. I mean,
so
yeah,
imagine,
because again, I think somebody had to, and this is Paulson or whoever else it was in there, they had to make a decision, right? We're gonna let this, we're gonna let this sucker fucking just go down. There was, who was it? It was Chris Cox, I think, who was a representative here in Southern California when they were doing this bailout. He didn't want to sign it. I mean, if you saw the movies that were made on this, it's like, fuck, no, hey, it's this is Adam Smith's hand. Shit happens. Let them all fucking go bankrupt. Let Lehman go bankrupt. Get all. Somebody made, Paulson and the rest of these guys made a decision to say,
I know.
The overall thing of everything is that we're gonna have to bail these fuckers out,
right?
Or else everybody's gonna be fucked, right?
But
so
they lost because we did TARP. We did, what is it, HAMP?
Well, we did TARP, but the weird thing about that, if you look at it, is the government actually made money on all that shit. They paid back and more, right? So, I mean, I think they made the right calculation in that case.
All the bankers on Wall Street got their bonuses.
Yeah. Again, there's compromises on everything, right?
What I'm pointing out is I think we are underestimating the psychological and sociological impact of GFC and all the bailouts.
Right.
Just as one example, I know for a fact that Bitcoin was invented because of those bank bailouts.
Right.
I know that for a fact. Okay, this time around, we have homeowners, we're going to a buyer's market. I just wonder about that. Maybe that's a topic for a whole separate
It
podcast,
might be.
whatever.
I mean, because you could just in society, it's like,
Right.
Is OnlyFans a viable fucking career option? Have things now. Right. I mean, it's like what as we said before, you would be crucified, or your parents would beat the crap out of you. I'm thinking of like things that have changed. If you thought you were going to go in a car with a stranger to take you somewhere for money, what are you, fucking crazy?
Yeah. No,
I mean, there's been this push of things that happen, right? So,
I get it.
Yeah.
That's
That's not exactly the right analogy, but it's in the same wheelhouse of that.
In a way, I think that's one of the most interesting things to look at as we are, to your point, entering into a buyer's market. Sellers get more and more desperate. Maybe they get laid off. Something happens. 20 years ago, there was this notion of like, okay, the economy's bad, shit happen. It's time to downsize. It's time to blah, blah, blah. But then we look at what the government did, what society did, what, the banks did. And I can't shake this feeling like America in 2025 is very different than America in 2009.
Consumers
like
are
average people, right?
Yeah.
I think the average middle class American back in 2009 is like, look, we have this mortgage. I made this commitment. I can't meet it because I lost my job or whatever. Hey, we got to sell. If we got to do a short sale and bring $5,000 to the table, that's what we got to do, and we'll find a rental. And then they saw TARP, they saw HARP, they saw all the bailouts, they saw the forbearance, they saw that. And I think maybe they themselves were like, I was a sucker. Why the fuck did I do that? And their children for sure said, oh, that was stupid.
I've seen this movie before.
Right. We should have just sat our ass in our nice $2 million house in Southern California and just refused to pay.
Yeah.
right, and the government would have come in and done something, right, I could see that really happening this time.
Yeah, so consumer sentiment has just changed. And,
Totally.
And maybe
Totally.
people aren't thinking about that.
And
Yeah.
the social sanction is different. Like I think about like 2009, if you say I filed bankruptcy and you went to church, I think your church would be like, what's up? You know? Today, I don't think that, I filed, it's like strategic bankruptcy or jingle mail. Like I don't think people would look at you the same way we would in 2009. They might look at you like, oh, you're pretty smart. Yeah, you learned to game the system because so many people feel like the system is rigged against them.
Yeah,
That I don't think we felt in 2009.
Yeah, it reminds me of a Dave Chappelle sketch about the president, right?
What?
When somebody asked him about about taxes. Hey, you cheat, you game their taxes, and say, yeah, absolutely. And it's like, holy shit, right? I mean, yeah, because I can.
Right.
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 And you're a fool for not doing the same thing I'm doing, right? And
Right.
What the future president is saying something like that?
Right.
I mean, it's a different thing.
So that's the part. So it's like, okay, buyer's market. Here's a funny thing, and we'll end with this. How crazy would it be if we go from a buyer's market because of affordability to a balanced market because all the sellers just pull their houses off the market and just stop paying the mortgage?
Well,
How
they got
crazy.
But I mean, they got to go somewhere, right? So
No, they just live there.
right.
We saw this happen in 2009. Like,
Yeah.
I personally know somebody who sat in their $3 million Orange County mansion, didn't pay a thing for like 3 years. And I'm like, and they saved up all that money and then harp, whatever, right? And they're like, okay, cool. Declare bankruptcy or whatever they did. Stuck it out for 7 years. And guess what? The cash they saved from not paying for housing for like 2 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Market goes down. They come back and buy. Like, it's insane.
Sure. Right. I mean, that's a big bet.
We know they did that.
Declare bankruptcy, wait the 7 years, and then the market is. I mean, it's there's a lot of things in there that a lot of people are not going to be. They're too risk averse to do that. But yeah.
We'll see. Anyway, I can't believe we ended up at that point for this. Listen, we'd love to know, because obviously this isn't anything where you and I have any particular expertise. Our viewers, our listeners are really pretty smart, sharp industry people. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think if we go into a buyer's market, truly a buyer's market, do you agree with me? Do you agree with Greg? Do you disagree with us both? What's your thoughts? We'd love to know.
Oh, I know. One last thing too.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Hope. My baby girl is 16 today.
Happy birthday, Sweet 16.
Yeah.
Oh, don't you have to have like a big party for Sweet 16?
We're gonna have some things tonight, so we'll have a good time.
All right, cool. We'll have to talk offline about. I forgot you have a daughter. I have questions for fathers of daughters. All right. Hey, thank you everyone for listening to us. Safe travels to DC, Greg, and we'll talk live next Friday, the 6th.
That's right. Bye.
All right. Okay. Thanks everyone. Ciao.